NBA preseason is in full swing, and we've had several noteworthy players returning from lengthy absences. Starting off with Zion Williamson, he obviously hasn't seen the court since his sophomore season, as he missed all last year with that foot injury, and honestly, he looked pretty good. Physically, he looks to be in the best shape of his life. There were several media day photos showing off his svelte frame, which was backed up by his trainer that he's been working harder on conditioning and training than he ever has before, so that's all good stuff for Zion and the Pelicans. He actually saw the court on Tuesday, and although he only played 15 minutes, he went 4 of 6 from the field, 5 of 5 from the free throw line, and he had 13 points and 4 rebounds, so not bad at all. And he had one noteworthy play where he drove baseline past Patrick Williams and emphatically dunked it with the type of athleticism that we've seen from him throughout his career, so that was impressive. And then also he was showing off the ball handling as well, so it'll be interesting to see if Willie Green brings back Point Zion this season now that CJ McCollum has joined the team. And speaking of CJ McCollum, it was also interesting to see Zion integrating into the new lineup with McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, and Herb Jones in the starting lineup, none of whom he had ever played with before. We also saw the return of a couple of guys in Denver, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. Of course, going back several years to that trade for Aaron Gordon, that core four of Jokic, Murray, MPJ, and Gordon has been tantalizing, but they've only been on the court for a brief amount of time, mostly because Jamal Murray promptly tore his ACL, and then, of course, last year, MPJ went out with that injury as well. So now that they're all back on the court, it's been incredible to see them together, and I truly think they will be one of the most formidable foursomes for quite some time going forwards. Murray on Monday played only 15 minutes, but he had 10 points on 4 of 7 shooting, including a fall-away halftime buzzer-beating jump shot. He just can't help himself be a clutch player, and he also set up Gordon and Porter Jr. a couple of times, and he was also fitting nicely alongside his new teammate Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the backcourt. And it looks like a little bit of rust for KCP. He didn't shoot the ball very well, but nonetheless, Murray has got to be feeling good to be back on the court, and he tweeted as much, saying 539 days later about that time. And then turning to his teammate MPJ, he looked pretty darn good as well. He only played 14 minutes and had 12 points on 5 of 7 shooting, including 2 3-pointers. He didn't seem to be hampered by that back at all. His shooting stroke has always been so pure, it's ridiculous considering his height. It's Kevin Durant-esque, and there was a couple of beautiful mid-rangers he knocked down in that game. I just cannot wait to see this team all together on the court for the regular season. The combination of Jokic, Porter Jr., Gordon, and Murray, it's just so perfect. They fit together so well, so I just hope they all stay healthy. Okay, next up we have Damian Lillard returning for the Portland Trail Blazers. They also played on Monday. Lillard saw the court for 24 minutes, and he was productive in that time. He went 6 of 10 from the field, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He had 3 3-pointers, 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. So you couldn't really ask for much more on a per-minute basis from Lillard in his return. He was, of course, starting alongside his new backcourt teammate Anthony Simons, as well as a couple of other new teammates, Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant. This new-look Portland Trail Blazers team has potential, but in a loaded Western Conference, it's unclear how far they'll be able to get. But nonetheless, Lillard seemed to be unencumbered by that abdominal injury that kept him out for the majority of last season, and as a smaller guard, you always have to worry about athleticism waning with longevity, but considering his incredible shooting prowess and style of play not really being reliant on athleticism like, for instance, Russell Westbrook, I have a feeling Lillard should be able to continue to move past this abdominal injury and get back to the level that he was at several years ago when he was a perennial All-NBA guard, elevating his team to an elite offense single-handedly. Gary Payton II did not play in this game for the Blazers, and so I'll be super interested to see how he looks alongside Lillard, because I would not be shocked if the Blazers do make it into the playoffs if we see more of GP2 alongside Lillard rather than Simons, despite the offensive drop-off. He just fits much more seamlessly alongside Lillard with the defense that he brings, so we'll have to see how that rotation shakes out. And then finally, we have one of the most anticipated returns of all, the point forward with the Brooklyn Nets, Ben Simmons. He also played on Monday versus his old team, the Philadelphia 76ers. He started alongside Kyrie and Kevin Durant, as well as Nick Claxton and another guy making his return, Joe Harris. This Brooklyn Nets team certainly has the potential to be a formidable contender, especially athletically, but there's just so many question marks that it's hard to have much faith in them. But the depth is impressive. TJ Warren and Seth Curry both did not make an appearance in this game, although new addition Royce O'Neal did play. He played 17 minutes and scored 11 points. But back to Simmons. He played 19 minutes and had 6 points. He was 3 of 6 from the field. He had 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. So it seems to be coming along for Simmons in his return. He seems to be getting back to the point where he was a couple years ago when he was the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. Although, hilariously, he did miss his only 2 free throws to a chorus of boos coming down from the Philly fans in the crowd there in Brooklyn. And then on Thursday, he played again against another top-tier Eastern Conference opponent in the Miami Heat, and he was a little bit less inspiring. It's just the preseason, but the Nets were blown out without Kyrie, and Simmons scored just 4 points in 25 minutes with 3 shot attempts. No free throws or 3-point attempts, obviously. He had 4 assists and 6 turnovers. At one point, Miami's defense forced 2 consecutive turnovers for Simmons, so suffice it to say, the full Ben Simmons experience is back. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Next up, we have the Golden State Warriors big man James Wiseman entering into his third year. The Warriors played the Wizards in Japan on September 30th and October 1st. And during that first game, Wiseman looked really solid, scoring 20 points on 8 of 11 shooting. And he had 9 rebounds as well in just 24 minutes. That was certainly encouraging. But then in the next game, he didn't look so hot. He was 2 of 7 from the field in 18 minutes. He scored 8 points, 3 rebounds. He also racked up 6 fouls as well during that time. So I think it's safe to say it's been kind of a mixed bag thus far for Wiseman in the preseason. The hype around him has always been off the charts, mainly due to being drafted second overall over LaMelo Ball, as well as, of course, playing for the Warriors. Obviously, he has the physical tools, but he just hasn't really proved anything yet on the court thus far in his NBA career, other than brief flashes. And I wasn't exactly blown away by these games, viewing them together. And then we also had a couple of guys making their debuts for their new teams. So on Thursday, we had a game in Abu Dhabi. It was the Hawks taking on the Bucks, and Dejounte Murray made his debut for Atlanta. He looked incredible, quite frankly. There was a lot of consternation, including by yours truly, about whether or not he could fit alongside Trae Young with his lack of shooting, and whether or not they gave up too much to get him, and whether or not his skill set would be accentuated or perhaps minimized playing alongside Trae. And while I think those were all fair questions to ask, the bottom line is that Murray is an incredible talent, especially athletically, and he is a huge upgrade over Kevin Huerter or Bogdan Bogdanovic or whoever was playing the shooting guard spot alongside Trae. And that was on full display in this game. It seems like both teams were putting out a little bit more effort than some of those other preseason games that we were talking about. Most of the main guys for the Hawks and the Bucks were playing other than Chris Middleton, and Murray shone brighter than pretty much everyone else. He had 25 points in 31 minutes on 9 of 13 shooting. He was 7 of 8 from the free throw line, which is a valuable source of offense for him, although he was 0 for 2 from 3, but he had a rebound, 9 assists as well, and 2 blocks, indicative of that trademark intense and lengthy defense that he brings, which is much needed alongside the defensively liable Trae Young, including 1 block from behind on Giannis. And he also hit John Collins on a pick and roll with a nasty dunk early on in this game, which is something that the Hawks will probably be exploiting to an insane degree, with a couple of the league's best pick and roll ball handlers in Trae and Dejounte, and then a couple of the league's best pick and roll rollmen in John Collins, Clint Capella, and Onyeka Okongwu. Then we also had Donovan Mitchell making his debut for the Cleveland Cavaliers on Wednesday. He only played 19 minutes, but he led the team in scoring with 16 points on 6 of 9 shooting, including 3 of 4 from 3, and he also had 2 rebounds and 5 assists. He started alongside Darius Garland and Karis LeVert in the backcourt, so it'll be interesting to see how that rotation shakes out, whether or not Isaac Okoro or Jetty Osman or Dean Wade will be starting alongside those two. But nonetheless, it was LeVert in this one starting alongside Garland and Mitchell. Nonetheless, those two seem to be developing some chemistry already. They were both quite efficient in this brief stint together. There was no Evan Mobley or Ricky Rubio in this game for the Cavs, as they're both still recovering from injuries. But like the Denver Nuggets, I find the Cavaliers foursome to be endlessly fascinating and one of the most exciting and intriguing teams heading into next season. And then Donovan Mitchell's former teammate, Rudy Gobert, made his debut for the Minnesota Timberwolves on Thursday night in Las Vegas against the Lakers. Unfortunately, Karl Anthony Towns did not play, so we didn't learn too much, but he did start next to Naz Reid, who did his best cat impersonation, so clearly they are practicing with this too big lineup. But there was also no Anthony Davis, no LeBron James, none of the other main rotation guys for LA. So in the end, this game was kind of a dud, but Rudy did his part. He looked good for the Wolves, as you would expect. He cleaned up on the glass. He had 12 rebounds in just 17 minutes, and he also had 5 points, 3 assists, 2 steals. So despite the limited minutes, Gobert still was able to showcase what he can do for the Wolves this season. He seems to be developing a little bit of chemistry with Ant and D'Lo, so that is good to see. And then we also had a former Maverick and a current Maverick making their debuts for their new teams. Jalen Brunson looked good for the Knicks on Tuesday. He played 20 minutes and was extremely efficient, scoring 16 points on 7 of 9 shooting, including 2 3-pointers, and he also had 5 assists. So you couldn't really ask for a much better debut than that, especially on a per-minute basis from Brunson against this Pistons team with whom the Knicks made a trade during the offseason for several guys. Anyways, Brunson was starting alongside Evan Fournier and RJ Barrett in what I assume is going to be the starting lineup, especially in the backcourt wing rotation for the Knicks going forwards, unless the young player Quentin Grimes can squeeze his way into the starting spot, although he didn't play in this game because of a sore left foot. Anyways, Brunson's efficiency was on full display in this game, which will be a boon for the Knicks, who were 26th in offense last season. And then the player that the Mavericks brought in to fill the offensive void left by Brunson was Christian Wood, and he made his debut in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Wednesday versus the Thunder. There was a lot of hullabaloo during the offseason regarding Jason Kidd's intentions to bring Wood off the bench in light of the Mavericks also acquiring JaVale McGee. He didn't play in this game. Dwight Powell was the starting big man, and so Wood did indeed come off the bench. He played 25 minutes, though, which was actually the most of anyone on the team, and he was solid in that time, scoring 16 points on 7 of 13 shooting, including 2 threes and 13 rebounds. So it seems clear that Wood will be coming off the bench, but he will have a pretty prominent role, and if he buys in, he is definitely a candidate for Sixth Man of the Year because his brand of high-volume offense certainly fits the mold of previous Sixth Man of the Year winners. Maxi Kleber also did not play in this game, nor did Tim Hardaway Jr., Davis Bertans, and of course Luka Doncic. So we didn't learn too much about the fit of Wood alongside those other prominent players. I'm particularly intrigued by the Kleber-Wood potential lineups because that would enable the Mavericks to go 5 out around Luka, and Kleber's defense around the rim would make up for Wood's deficiencies on that end. So that's pretty much it for the players making debuts for their new teams or making their returns from injury absences. But we had a couple of other interesting storylines from a couple of young guards. So first of all, Tyrese Maxiell has been incredible thus far for the 76ers alongside James Harden. In fact, he has probably been the best player in the entire league through these first couple of preseason games. First, on Monday versus the Nets, he incredibly dropped 20 points in just 14 minutes on 6 of 8 shooting, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He had 2 3-pointers and 3 assists. He was playing alongside new teammate De'Anthony Melton, as well as Matisse Thybulle in the starting lineup. In that game, Embiid, Harden, and Tucker all did not play. But then on Wednesday versus the Cavaliers, the 76ers had their full starting lineup, and Maxey once again was the star of the show in limited minutes, scoring 21 points on 9 of 11 shooting. He had 3 3-pointers in that one in just 15 minutes. So incredible stuff from Maxey. He provides the 76ers with a much-needed spark offensively because Embiid and the rest of the rotation for Philly can tend to slow things down a little bit, the pace, but Maxey is one of the fastest players in the league. He's always pushing the pace, streaking down the floor. At one point in that game on Wednesday, Embiid hit Maxey on a breakaway, and then he kicked it back to a trailing Harris, who laid it in, and he also hit his trademark foul line floater over Robin Lopez. So it's still early, but it seems like his offensive evolution as basically a 50-40-90 shooter from last season is legit, and if that's the case, he is an incredibly valuable piece for this suddenly deep and talented 76ers squad that has been tipped in recent weeks as a contender to win the Eastern Conference. And then another young guard that impressed so far has been the Australian point guard for the OKC Thunder, Josh Giddy. After an impressive summer league, he has continued his productive play for the Thunder. On Monday against the Nuggets, he nearly dropped a triple-double with 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. He did it all in just 25 minutes. And he was 6 of 11 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3. Obviously, his shooting has been his biggest weakness thus far in his career, so this efficient display is certainly encouraging. He also picked up 2 steals and a block as well. Unfortunately, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not playing yet for the Thunder as he's coming back from injury, and of course, Chet Holmgren is going to miss the entire season. But despite that, there still just seems to be a sense of excitement and optimism around this young team, the OKC Thunder, which has been rebuilding for what seems like a decade already. Then on Wednesday, as the Thunder played against the Mavericks, Giddy had yet another efficient scoring night. In just 17 minutes, he had 13 points on 6 of 10 shooting, although he was a little bit less productive throughout the box score with 2 rebounds, 3 assists. He still had 3 steals. And then on Thursday, once again, he was fairly productive and efficient. 3 of 5 from the field, 10, 5, and 6 with 2 blocks. So from a fantasy perspective, I expect a big year from Giddy, and once SGA returns, I think this Thunder team might surprise people with how competent they are. And then we also had an incredible performance from the mysterious rookie for the Portland Trailblazers, Shaedon Sharpe. He played on Tuesday, and he didn't do a whole lot, but then on Thursday, he looked incredible. Granted, it was against a second division team from Israel, which is a whole separate discussion. Like, why not just play some actually good foreign teams? But nonetheless, there was former NBA guys on the roster, and Sharpe stood head and shoulders above everyone on the court. Literally, in fact, he was soaring over everyone, nearly hitting his head on the backboard. He was so high on a couple of dunks. We'll have to keep an eye on Sharpe going forwards, but dropping 27 points on 10 of 13 shooting can't hurt. And then finally, we had Ja Morant already doing Ja Morant things with this insane finish.